All right, hi everybody, or I guess hi, Brad. We are live. It's Wednesday. We're 2 days away from the weekend. I hope your Juneteenth was a good Juneteenth. I had the day off, fortunately, but I was still working because money never sleeps. Is that the
That's
Wall
what they
Street
say.
term? Yeah. So, but it was fine. It was good. Um, how was your week been so far?
It's been pretty good. That's we were just backstage sharing our losses. It's a lot like poker. Like you don't, they the movie Rounders. You ever seen Rounders?
Oh my gosh, yes. If I could get a sealed Rounders VHS, I would buy it. But yes.
Hey, that's another one we have in common. Then, yeah. What's up, Michael Baker? Thanks for joining us, buddy. So when they're it's pretty close to the beginning of that movie when they're talking about um, poker players don't remember the big wins, but they remember the tremendous losses.
Right.
And that's relatable to us. I think it's not that in the same time period we shared some deals that we missed out on during the last week backstage, and those tend to sting. But it's one of the things that I always try to do is share those with other people who can relate, because it lets you know you're not on an island, because I don't know what your salary is, but mine is zero. So if I'm losing stuff, I'm not making a paycheck. So it's it can be tough. But I also potentially picked up a listing who needs to buy as well. So, but missing out on the one, it's just I should be rejoicing that I lost one, but I picked up two technically. So, but it's hard to let those losses go, man. They sting.
Like I was telling you backstage, it's hard to kind of flip like the positive when you have so many losses, right? Like when you're batting 100 or you lost seven straight, it's tough to kind of keep going. I think that's the hardest part about this job that we have as, a real estate advisor or a mortgage broker, what have you. Um, but I feel like that's the only thing you can do nowadays. The the kind of the loss I had today was kind of out of my power. And in actual or the other day, in actuality, it was kind of a nice it was nice to know that someone who I'd worked with in the past had thought of me and referred my services to another potential client. Now with my side of the business, money talks, right? So I could be the most Brad of all time and still lose a deal. Meaning, I could, be great customer service, work till 10:45 at night on a Friday, which you did this past Friday. And if the money's not right, it's it's if I'm off by $6,000, I mean, I don't have a $6,000 smile. I would think I do, but I don't. And you kind of just have to think, well, if it occurs consecutively, then maybe I'm dealing with the wrong market. Maybe I need to deal with like 500 to $600,000 houses versus 700,000 to a million, because that's not my market for the company I work for, um, or what have you, or like I've had deals where I didn't feel really comfortable about it, and the buyer walked away from me, and in the end, I think I felt like okay about it, just because of the the desperation of that client and them not really listening to like my advice. Um, because I come from a money standpoint. It's a more negative emotional thing, I think, from clients. They look at me as I'm gonna cost them money versus like, well, I actually help you get the money to buy that house. Whereas like with real estate agents, and this is, it's the world I chose, right? You guys could do the fun part and show them around houses and all that good stuff. But you do, your job is very important in regards to like advising them on this is a good home, good area to know that stuff. And so there's a different set of like skills, right? But I always there's always a little bit of envy from us mortgage peeps because we don't get to see the house. We don't get to turn that key and see that look of gratification on someone. I usually get the calls afterwards like, "Hey, my payment went up by this much. Like, is it well, I thought I had a fixed rate." I'm like, "Oh, well, taxes, insurance come through." And it's fine. It's not, again, it's the life I chose. However, it comes down to money, like in my job. So it is what it is. So
As you're saying that, I'm thinking of all the the little behind the scenes things that I have to deal with. Like, hey, they were supposed to leave the Ring doorbell and it's not here, or hey, weren't those curtain rods supposed to stay? Or I mean, it's just like a never ending. There's always there's always something that comes up that kind of. But you're right. I mean, you don't. The interaction is much more impersonal, I guess, for you. I do the majority of my work in person with people, so that
yeah,
that's nice. It's nice to do. So
no, definitely. And it's a constant kind of like any good relationship based job. You just have to make sure you're on the same, kind of page. And I told the client, I can't compete with that. And it would be, you know, I based on was like, yeah, take that deal all day. And they were kind of like, oh, like, are you sure? I'm like, well, I can't really beat it. And looking around the market, I think you just jump on it because you're gonna lose the house. Oh, that was okay. Well, too bad we can work together, but I really appreciate that business and whatever. And I just kind of, I went back to the customer and said, hey, what's your address? Let me send you, or I have your address. Let me send you like a thank you for at least thinking about me. And I'll throw in like some type of just like small little gifts that's branded by my company or whatever. And who knows, later down they need a HELOC or they need refinancing, and like hopefully I can help them out. So you just have to
and
look
that
at
would be a good.
positive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that would be a good story.
sure.
Hey, we
Yeah.
had a deal fall through and they still used me for something in the future. So yeah, that's nice. So
Yeah.
do you? I'll ask this because I'm sure people in the chat or watching on the replay are curious. But where does most of your business come from? So
So,
you do several different states that you do loans for. So because I was just thinking, lenders here, a lot of them will show up to the closing, but that's probably not really an option for you unless it's like hyper
local.
local.
Yeah. I don't typically show up to closings because of that. However, I've offered to, and clients have been either like, "Oh, that's okay, like, we can touch base later," or um yeah, and I'll come down and I'll kind of go through the loan estimate and the final closing disclosure and all that. But a lot of it is obviously referral. Um The other parts are from just our existing clients at the bank I work for, and but no, I mean, I think a majority of it is referral. You really have to, and it's hard to kind of say, "Oh, thanks for your business. Can I get, to help me keep putting food on the table, can you refer other clients to me?" It's the hardest part I have with like just, whatever. But I guess it's the same thing with like asking people to like and subscribe to our channel or let us know in the comments how we're doing or just ask general questions. So I think, you'd be kind of dumb to not think to yourself like, "Oh, this person doesn't need more business," and a lot of times it's like, it's how the world works. Like if you present, value in your business to that client, they're gonna be so excited about talking about how awesome you were. So yeah, I do ask for that in simpler ways, like either like through like a thank you candle or like just like a thank you like gift of some sort. It has to be under $20, so you can't go that crazy, but it's some people have like their card on their refrigerator, kind of old school stuff. But yeah, but I also think that the world is changing. A lot of people that maybe don't have friends that are first time home buyers or parents, what have you, everyone's situation is different. Like I've worked with, first generation home buyers, not just first time home buyers, but first generation home buyers, and they have no connection whatsoever to the U.S. And so they'll come to me and they'll find my picture on like our website or something like that. So if I can establish a relationship like that and still have a job for the next 10 to 15 years, it's completely organic and foundational relationship. And I think that's the easiest way to get clients. Well, what about you? I mean, with real estate agents, like I'll always like remember an agent that worked in like say Tacoma, which is south of here. And I'll be like, man, that agent was awesome. I'm not even going to ask him if I can send him business. I'll just send it to him. But where do you get a majority of your business? Is it through clients or is it through like B2B or how's it work?
Yeah, it's I'm kind of trying to think about ways to do that. I'm reading a book now that talks about it's called The Connector's Way. And um but most of mine is sphere, past clients, um some family, a lot of, I don't know, family's kind of weird, but close family for sure. And then past clients, just stay in front of them, just remind them, because I saw a quote one time that said, it's because we get discouraged when we look up. If I send out, this is the worst. I always get depressed around Christmas time. So I send a Christmas card and it gets returned because the address has changed. And I'm like, dang
Oh,
it, how did I miss that? Like, and I saw a quote that really put it in perspective for me. It said, it's not your client's responsibility to remember what you do. It's your responsibility to make sure they never forget. And
mm,
just that, stay in front of them. All of my past clients, for the most, I'm pretty sure all of them, they all get a birthday card from
hmm
me, and social posts and Christmas cards and random postcards about things. So you and I have talked about this, but I think that's the most fulfilling way to get business. I mean, sure, you can pay for leads and do that kind of stuff. Zillow is something that a lot of agents use. I think it's kind of saturated. I used to do Zillow in the beginning, and I found that though them as clients, they're accustomed to finding houses online. They'll find a house, click, send me more information, and then some random agent calls them, which is how I
hmm
found them. And they're accustomed to doing business that way. So they don't think, well, why don't I call Brad to show me this house? They're just thinking that's the process. So they're those long term haven't always been the best. Um, I was just reading Michael Baker. Nice touch. Make people feel like they're more than a number on a spreadsheet. That's the way to do it. That's. I was telling somebody today that old school, like people would rather send a happy birthday email or text than actually write out a card. And I'll write out a card and just say, hey, I hope you have a very happy birthday. Enjoy your special day with family and friends. If uh, if I can be of service to you, please let me know, and I'll put a business card in there and send it out.
hmm
And it's just but it's I handwrite those every month. Nothing is printed. It's a blank card. So I'm writing all that stuff every time. And I think people still appreciate that. I think they
hmm
still I think it still matters. I think that still matters to people. But it's mostly past referrals from past clients. That's, I mean, if you think about it, that's your sales force, regardless of what you're selling, and what you do and what I do. Um, that's your sale. You've got a sales force that you're building out there, people that are you know, your biggest fans. And, that's why not tap into that. We call it at Keller Will. There's Keller Williams agents have a, kind of a, um, rep for drinking the Kool-Aid. There's a lot of like these sayings that we adopt and stuff, but we don't call it a database. We call it a data bank, because there's that's your bread and butter. That's, you've got business right in front of you, and we want to chase everything else, but you've got business right at your fingertips right there. So just like pour yourself into that.
Sure,
So
yeah, it's I do try and use a lot of just like, I have my own spreadsheets too, but our company I work for, they're very good about providing CRM tools to kinda just go through, and then just our database, like, the production software that we use, it has I mean, I could just put a date in and say, like, "Okay, 6 past months, what HELOCs did I close? What first mortgages, refis, whatever." And I can just kinda go through them. Um, but yeah, I always try and call our clients and, like, just until I get a voice on the phone, because I feel like, as much as I can do to have them remember a conversation, or just like, "Oh, man, Fernando spent an hour with me just talking the breeze," or just, what have you. Um, I think that's important, especially in this kind of like work from home kind of deal, or like Fernando being another state, that type of thing. So anyway, um, yeah, you know, sounds like we had a couple losses this week. I think more so on my end than yours, but it's part of the job. We've had probably really great years the past couple years, so you take it for what it's worth and you just keep going and all that good stuff. But
and you
let's get
think
into
about the importance of being gracious in those moments. Like
yeah,
the lady that called me that had a change of heart was very upset, So my response was, I will, I didn't, I said, I told her, I said, if you're certain, I said, it's not uncommon to feel the way you feel because,
yeah,
when you're making the biggest purchase of your life,
hmm
it's not uncommon to wonder or have doubts or question things. Um, so, I was just kind of gracious about it. I mean, I think that's the way you have to approach it, is just like, be who you are. I mean, it can be frustrating, but we still have to provide that customer service all the way to the end, win or lose, and you never know what'll come of it. So, yeah.
yeah.
Well, you'll get the next one, Ferd. I feel certain.
Yeah,
Keep it
and
rolling.
I at least with you, you still have the client, right? So it's not like they left you, right?
Right.
So that's good. Um, so anyway, yeah, kind of a crazy day for me. I'm not gonna get too much into it, but I had to do some rearranging of my wedding coming up in a month, which is just insane. I'm getting married in my Catholic wedding. We're heading to the Philippines in a month, 2 days from now. So I'm a little stressed out, but I'm excited at the same time. I think it's more excited than stressed out. So I took care of some stuff today. But let's get into some investment stuff. So this is like my favorite part of the show, probably because I get to talk the most, because I like to talk. I don't know. But yeah, I was just thinking of traveling, because obviously I'm going to the Philippines and whatnot. And I was going to all these different sites. I was going to uh, Philippine Airlines, because that's the airline we're taking domestically. And I was having to change stuff there. And then I was looking over kind of our booking.com, reservations for the hotel we're staying at. And then just I had a friend call me about an investment property. He was trying to do an Airbnb type thing. So I was like, man, there's kind of a lot of travel stuff going on, because it's summertime, and people are still that COVID kind of thing, catching up or whatever. And I kind of just took like a general kind of view of the market for travel and leisure, and it's holding up. However, um, I don't know if it's a good entry point, and that's kind of the basis of the show today, as far as like the investment part. Brad, do you have any big plans or vacations coming up this in the next 3 or 4 months?
Not as many as I need.
Uh-huh.
I feel like I need, it's always like, gosh, I just want to get away for a long weekend or something. I was supposed to go to, we always kind of throw kind of season this with comic book stuff, but I was supposed to go to Heroes Con this past
Right,
weekend, and
right.
I it was just too busy. So, and we usually do a family trip in October to the mountains. So, I I'm assuming we're going to do that again this year, and that's always fun. Just hang out, and so that's and we always get I go with my nephews. Who My oldest nephew is married and has 2 kids, so um he wants to make sure We go get some really good. We go to a place near the cabin called Peabody's. Do some craft beer shopping and get us a bunch of different craft
Craft beer.
beers
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
always get a cabin with a hot tub. So we'll sit in the hot tub. It's freezing cold outside, but we're in the hot tub and hanging out, drinking craft beer, and just having a good time. So I think we're going to do that again this year. But yeah, I could probably use another. And I've never been on a cruise. I've never done a cruise.
We almost did a cruise we were thinking about doing a cruise this weekend. And Michael, I've been doing a lot of staycations lately. Um, my work from home life has been very staycation lately because it's so slow. However, yeah, I do like a staycation. But we were looking at doing Mexico, doing the Gulf of Mexico and doing that kind of deal. However, I think the family we're going with, we're just gonna do the old school. I've never been to Mexico before. We'll be going with my wife in December. So looking forward to the Pacific islands and then the Gulf of Mexico kind of beach life. So it should be very adventurous for me. So
Have you done one before? Have you been on a cruise before?
I never have a what's really popular here is there's a cruise you can go from Seattle to Alaska,
Mm,
and you get either dropped off in Alaska. A lot of people get dropped off in Alaska and then they fly back to wherever they're going. But the kind of the big thing about Alaska is they have glaciers, obviously, right? And you get so close you can actually touch it. They like kind of have the boat there and you touch the glacier. I've never gone before. I did salmon fishing there a long time ago when I was like pretty young. But if you like outdoors or if you like bald eagles and bears and stuff, man, Alaska's kind of it's quiet. It's very nature up there. But yeah, and if you like to fish, I mean, the salmon there are like just huge. I don't know if you ever had good old king salmon. It's the best. There's nothing beats it, man. I've had Atlantic salmon. I've had regular sockeye king salmons. It's the greatest fish of all ever. Anyway,
yeah, I think I've only done like Atlantic or the sockeye. I've never had king salmon. I'm sure it's good
it's
there,
delicious, man.
being closer to that stuff. But I guess shipping is probably an issue here in the South.
Yeah, that's why I say like, man, go to Alaska I mean, you don't have to go to Alaska, but it's definitely an experience. And yeah, Michael, they never do. It's
Clearly
one of
not.
the highlights. Really not. I don't know.
Don't do the Christmas story and try to lick a glacier and your
Yeah,
tongue gets
don't lick the
stuck on it
glacier.
while the
Yeah,
boat's going by.
yeah, you're gonna get eaten up by one of those polar bears that are like or a killer whale. I see those quite often. Actually, kind of in my backyard here, which is kind of
Wow.
yeah. There's a ferry that kind of goes across Kingston. So Edmonds is where I live, and there's Kingston, which is like you have to take a ferry across. And there's humpbacks and killer whales, like
Wow.
not totally common, but like if you go around enough, you'll see them. We love our wildlife out here. So
That is really cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool. For $15, I mean, it's in a fair ride. It's kind of cool too. So,
That's
um,
neat.
yeah. So Carnival was the first one. Obviously, you're talking about cruises. It During the pandemic, there were a lot of companies that just got decimated because they had to cancel flights, had to cancel cruises, and this company actually went bankrupt or almost went bankrupt. It's near 52-week highs, so basically over a year period, right now it's near a 52-week high. Um, the let's see, it's trading around $15 a share, which I think is pretty fair because of the amount of people wanting to vacation and take Carnival cruises. It's kind of that mainstay like brand. I personally am not investing in it. I wouldn't say yes or no to invest in it because here's kind of the thing I have about travel stocks in general right now is I feel like a lot of people are using the time that they didn't have during the pandemic to vacation, but it's getting more expensive. So with just everything's just so expensive to do, I feel like this is the last summer where Carnival, Delta, Booking, etc. It's going to be kind of a it's like their last summer that they'll do like incredibly well. and the upcoming like third, fourth quarter, you're they're really going to have to outperform to push this stock past where it's at currently because these are just going to get more expensive. What how do you feel about taking a vacation right now? Like, do you feel comfortable doing it money wise?
I always look at it from the perspective of what we do. It's like
Yeah.
I've been very cautious for about the last year when interest rates started going up, but I think if I think I would if I were in a normal job. I think I would, and the people I know who are in normal, like get paid every 2 weeks kind of thing, um, seem to be taking a fair amount of vacations,
Hmm.
and do and maybe they could be offsetting the cost by doing, um, let's rent a house at the beach with the entire family. So then you offset the cost of the vacation. But yeah, I think I would. I think it's certainly necessary.
Yeah.
Carnival's like the name. Carnival's like Kleenex. It's
Right.
like that when you think of cruises. I would imagine a pretty large number of people would name a cruise line. That's probably one of the first ones that people would think of.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I chose it. I didn't want to get like too fancy with the stuff we were talking to, or with companies that people may or may not know. And I personally didn't know a lot. I did throw one kind of at the end that was kind of like, oh, that's a different one to think about. But yeah, just kind of use it as a barometer. Delta, of course, is the next one I talked about. This stock's around 45 to $50 a share on the range. It's also up near 52-week high, but it's actually been doing a lot of this. Not like a straight, kind of incline. However, it's definitely gone up quite a bit. Again, I probably wouldn't buy stock in Delta. I don't like airline stocks in general, and this is the reason for me is they're so truncate or they're so they correlate with oil, and I don't like trading in commodity based stocks because it's something that I don't really like to follow. And if oil is expensive, te- typically airline stocks, travel stocks go down because of the cost of oil. And usually like if if a company isn't hedged correctly on their oil futures, it can cripple the company if oil just takes a skyrocket up the other way. Um, and it's just too much to delve into versus like the actual underlying business of putting people in seats and what have you. So it's good to see because I think of Delta as like one of those like kind of not want to say upper class, but like middle class. Like, oh, I have some good money. I'm gonna spend it on like a Delta and get that Nordstrom type customer service. So it's good to see this at a 52-week high. It's healthy. However, I just want to get into it as of right now. What airline do you prefer to fly to?
I
Fly
usually
from?
fly Delta.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why do you choose Delta? Just out of curiosity.
I've I think they were the most traveling I've done probably in the last 12 years was when I was for those that don't know, I used to run a volunteer tutoring program. So I was the program director for a volunteer tutoring program. So part of our budget included us going to an annual conference every year. In fact, it was required that we go. It was a grant. Our program was a grant program that was run by AmeriCorps or through AmeriCorps. So we had to go to the annual AmeriCorps conference every year. So I got to go to a lot of different places, and my boss who wrote the grant he always liked Delta, so that's what we flew, and I just enjoyed it. So I just kind of stuck with what I knew, but it was comfortable, roomy, good customers, yeah, all that stuff that you were saying. What about yourself?
I'm privy to Delta just because my cousin is a flight attendant with Delta, and I never had a bad flight on Delta before. Alaska used to kind of be like the one that everyone in the Northwest would use because it was less expensive, but now it's as expensive as Delta, and so obviously, like I'm gonna look at the cheapest one and what's available, at least internationally. However, I like Delta. I don't travel like a ton. When I go when I do travel though, it's like a really it's like a pretty big trip, you know. Um, but no, I prefer Delta myself. So
And
um,
what are you flying to the Philippines?
it's called Eva Air, so it's an Asian airline. Just because there's not a lot of options in the time we're going. I think the pandemic hit a lot of areas as far as like airlines into the Philippines, so it's a little tougher to find. Like Delta was fine out there, but it's really expensive. And it's like a 17-hour layover in Korea, which Korea is an awesome. If you ever get to go, like, if you ever go to Southeast Asia or Asia in general, and you have a layover in Korea, like, it's not a bad airport to stay in. But 17 hours is like I might as well just visit the country, that kind of thing. So,
Right.
um, but yeah, no, no, yeah, Delta's the way to go in my opinion, consumer wise, stock wise,
Sure.
to each his own.
Yeah.
Um, and then Priceline, aka Booking.com. So I always think of Priceline. I always think of William Shatner from it was the early
I do too. Yeah.
2000s, right? So the funny thing about Booking or Priceline is they were a .com like massacre of a company. Went from like 2K a share down to almost like a dollar or $3. And during kind of the 2000s, like pre-recession, the company got taken over by, or the CEO went out and started acquire online European companies. So like the Priceline.com for Europe. And they started to scoop up those companies. And I quote me if I'm wrong, but like I think his idea was Europe Europe is just so closely like, interconnected, right? So if you're not taking a train, you're taking an airplane, and if there's a lot of flights available, why don't we be like the main presence in as far as airfare in Europe, and just undercut the competitors and just buy the market. So essentially that's what they did. And I mean, they've done some, obviously Booking.com is now Priceline. Um, they've done some mergers and acquisitions, and it's worked. I mean, the stock is 2,500 bucks a share, and it's an
Wow.
online booking company. They don't split the company. So they don't split shares of the company. So it's kind of another one of those quiet, like big boy stocks, during the pandemic, I recommend I should have listened to my own kind of fortitude. I recommended buying Priceline shares because I knew, once the pandemic got figured out, it may take some time. Um, yeah, like this stock's gonna rise again because people are gonna wanna book flights once flights are available. And they weren't as hit bad as like the actual like they weren't hit like, the Carnivals, the Deltas, because they're not airlines, they're just selling tickets for airlines. And so they just have to reduce like staff. But once the airways opened up again, it's back up to 2,400 bucks a share. Damn
Do you
it.
think people like the ability to do everything on one site? Like you can book your flight, you can book your hotel, you can book a rental car all in the same place, or do you think people would rather shop that stuff individually?
I thought about that too. I've never done like a package like deal on a website for whatever reason. I always book them separately. And I think it's because like for example, on my flight to the Philippines, I actually I booked, so we had two different hotels, and we did the hotels on booking.com, and then I went domestically to the actual airline website to book my tickets for our domestic flights, and then I went through Expedia for our flights, here, because it's like I think I don't know, it just seemed cheaper to do it that way. I don't know. What about you? What do you feel like?
I I don't think I've ever I don't think I've ever done that either. I was just wondering maybe for there's probably some people I'm much like yourself. I am conscious of I'm looking for the best deal on stuff a lot of times.
Yeah.
So I'll usually check online or even call. Sometimes if you call the hotel, you can, talk to somebody and say, "Hey, what do you have?" Or "I've got this discount card," or whatever. I
Yeah.
usually do it all separately, but I could see someone where maybe money isn't an object where they might choose to, "Oh, I'm just going to knock it out all at once." And if it's $100 a night difference or $50 a night difference, I don't care because I'm done in 15 minutes. I've got the whole vacation, including rental car booked.
Yeah.
So that
Um,
convenience factor.
I mean, I think it's a little bit easier, right, to like kind of combine all your trips together. Like for us, I just put everything on my Apple Wallet, so like all of our tickets are on the Apple Wallet, and I think also with just like technology and like having multiple screens, that was always the issue with me back when I was like, in my 20s, like trying to book stuff is like I didn't have an extra like screen to look at. It was always just that one screen. So I was like, like, so it's hard to compare, like kind of like this website versus that website. Where nowadays, like I'll look at my phone, I'll look at my laptop, and I'll look at my iPad, and then I'll just kind of compare all three. So this is kind of a tip for people, like find a hotel that you like or somewhere you want to stay, and then see the dates for those different sites, and just go on different sites and see. In my experience, booking.com as far as hotels always has the best price. I don't know why. Expedia always has like the most available flights. So it's like if it's a matter of like need, I always use Expedia. And then like if you're flying domestic, I always check the actual airline website first. Um, yeah, and I think the problem too with that, Michael, is that not everybody wants to work together. You know, it's like the hotels are like, they'd rather you call the hotel directly because if you go through a website, they got to pay like, 1% of like the hotel fee to that other website. I think that's what it'd be nice if that was like there's one single app to kind of rule them all type deal, but it'd be cool if there was an app to like if you put all your details into it, it would like kind of coordinate for you. I just don't. It's hard for those companies to talk because they have to exchange data, right? So maybe the blockchain will help that out eventually. I don't know. We'll see. So um, anyway, I'll
Interesting.
go. I'll go to the next slide here real quick. Hold on. Okay, let's see here. Oops. And then these last three, I was thinking of, okay, how do you, kind of piggybacking on booking.com. I don't know why I have Rivian in there. That's not Rivian. Delete that one. I thought I saved it. My apologies. So Airbnb is, I think this kind of affects both of us, right? Because how many times do you have a client being like, oh, I want to buy a investment property, Airbnb it? Does that happen quite often? And how do you deal with those type of clients?
It's starting to happen a lot more. People transitioning from, because I've got one client now who wants to get into like build his rental property portfolio. And I think with the Airbnb, I don't know, it's a little more hands-on maybe than the rental where you just collect the rent each month. And Airbnb, you got to get a cleaning crew in there, clean it each time before the next guest gets there and that kind of thing. So, but I am starting to see it a little bit more. In fact, some past clients of mine have a friend who has a couple of them around town, which would not have thought that Columbia would be, a destination. But they said, well, how often is it rented? I mean, you
Uh-huh.
figure what's there to see here. But they said, well, pretty much around about 20 days out of the month it was rented. So
Wow.
that's actually really good. And then I got to thinking, okay, well, you've got the University of South Carolina. Then
Mhm.
you've got all these smaller colleges that are in Columbia. There's 5 or 6 smaller colleges and universities in Columbia. We've got an army base here, Fort Jackson.
Oh,
So
that makes sense.
just about every weekend, there's a graduation or something at Fort Jackson going on. So you have family coming from California and Arkansas and Texas or wherever to for the graduation for their family member. So there's and then of course we're I don't know what 2 months away from college football season,
Oh,
and
man.
that's going to be massive. So
Yeah.
that's there was one probably a half a mile or mile away from about a mile away from my house. I knew it was an Airbnb. Every weekend, if we were playing, if Florida was playing us here, there were Florida tags in the driveway. Alabama
Oh,
tag. It was just like every weekend that it was and the
religion.
house had a it wasn't a like a great house or anything, but they
Yeah,
had
it's just a house.
a big room with a pool table and had a pool in the backyard. And I'm like, I could see people, hey, let's get a couple of families, stay in the Airbnb and go to the football game. So it's starting to pick up a lot more here. And after realizing the opportunity, it makes sense. But I think I don't know, 20 days out of the month seem pretty good at
That seems incredible. I would think, like,
yeah,
I would be happy with, like, a week like, each weekend, or, like, that amount of, like, revenue coming through, right? The the kind of the annoyance that I have personally with Airbnb is that the rents are just too high, or, like, you get to pretty comparable, like, hotel, like, rent or, stay, and then they at the end, when you total it up, they put, like, a $400 cleaning fee and then, like, these weird taxes and all that stuff, and that's what really deters me from it because it's like, well, why would I pay that amount if I could stay at the same hotel with, like, a coffee shop indoors and, room service, all the other stuff that I kind of enjoy, um, to, like, where it's just a house, like, that you're going to. But for, like, that kind of scenario, it seems to make more sense where people probably don't wanna stay at a hotel. They'd rather have, like, a kind of a backyard kind of, like, home feel and then walk to the football game or, um, there's no limitation of, like, you could have, like, 20 people. I don't know if you can limitations, but, like, when you go to a hotel, it's harder to get it, it's harder to get keys for people. Um, if you have kids, you're gonna have to there's only, like, a limit per room, that kind of thing. So, I think that's the one thing that's really good for is families. But for, like, couples, I think, or, like, just, like, bachelor parties or whatever, it's kind of a different breed. But yeah, I personally I've thought about the whole Airbnb process, but I think I just don't have, like, I don't get that. I get a lot of anxiety from, like, renting stuff out. I'm not good at any of that
sure, yeah.
stuff. So that's just me though. Teach his own.
I have noticed that they're starting to do these companies that manage the Airbnb for you are starting to pop up as well. So they have their own cleaning crew. They handle the booking and stuff like that. So basically, you provide the. So I thought that was kind of an interesting service to offer for
Mm,
the people who don't want to be hands on. I talked to a past client today, and he told me that one of my other a mutual friend who's also a past client, they moved to the mountains of North Carolina, and the house next door to them came available, so they bought it and used it as an Airbnb, and they're
mhm.
getting ready to sell it because they were just kind of handling it themselves, and the wife's just tired of cleaning it every time people come in and leave, so it's that part could be a hassle. I could see that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and as far as the stock is concerned, it's at another 52-week high, and the forward earnings growth is a 42 price to earnings ratio. So to kind of just give, like, your normal kind of explanation of what a price to earnings ratio is, it's the amount over the price of that people are willing to pay over the actual earnings of the stock. So basically, what this is saying is, let's say Airbnb um, did, like, a dollar per share in revenue. People are paying 42 times that amount. So why would someone pay that much? So in That's typical with a growth stock. But what your expectation is with Airbnb is that it's going to grow 42 times earnings. And so you kind of think about that, like, you're basically paying $42 over market price for it. in kind of a way. Um, a healthy PE ratio is like 15 to 20. However, with like internet stocks or just anything that's service based, it's people are more willing to pay a higher price just because that's how the market is. It's it's almost it's unexplainable, but it's just investors see more potential in Airbnb. And I just think that I haven't looked at the breakdown of how Airbnb makes its money, like as far as like the earnings reports and all that, but I don't know. It's I think the problem with Airbnb is that you're falling into that same type of problem with inventory and housing. So if you don't grow the housing segment of Airbnb, so rentals basically, and there's probably less and less rentals being bought out because interest rates are so high. Um, I just feel that it's going to be tough for it to keep going, and especially with things getting more expensive. Kind of the same thing with airlines and everything else. It's tough to pay 42 times forward earnings for a company that is kind of in a weird rut as far as the economy and all the uncertainties with interest rates and all that. So, um,
I was
yeah,
just noticing Michael Baker's comment. My wife and her sister are traveling over 4th of July week. They rented an Airbnb. So that, Michael, based on what you told us earlier, that means you've got a staycation coming up.
yeah,
So
seriously,
the wife is leaving, so you've got a staycation coming up. So
smart,
congratulations.
smart man, staying home during 4th of July weekend, play a bunch of video games and read a bunch of comics, man. That's what I would do. And then, last but not least, I wanted to kind of throw kind of have you ever been in the Wynn in Vegas
I've
or
never been
Macau?
to Vegas.
Oh my goodness, Brad, you've never been to Vegas. I guess
Never
it's not a
been.
bit. It's different because you're from the East Coast. I'm sorry.
I was supposed to go 1 year and it didn't, and it fell through. But
Um,
yeah, so me, Ferd, and Pickles in Vegas.
well, it's me a lot of napping and a lot of eating crab. Michael, that I have 3 cats. That'd be my dream weekend. I love cats. So when is like the Cadillac, the Mercedes, the Delta of casinos? It just spits luxury. You walk in there and you feel like $1 million, and it's very intimidating to be around people there. It's the funny thing about so when people think about casino stocks, which Win is a casino, if you don't know, um, the growth isn't in Vegas. It's a very small amount of revenue in Vegas for the big casinos. The the big money that these companies make is from Macau. And some people know that. I wasn't sure if anyone watching the rewind or watching right now or Brad knew, but a majority of the reason why casino stocks have gone up so much in the past so many years is because of the independent island of Macau. Yeah, Macau was a Portuguese what do you call it? It was owned by the Portuguese. They claimed independence. It's a city state, and it's basically the whole island. Not the whole island, but the majority of the island has Wynn Casino, has Las Vegas Sands, their own branded casinos, but it is the Las Vegas of Asia. And in some cases, the or it's been said that the income derived from Macau versus Vegas is like 4 times.
Wow.
And a lot of it is because of rich Chinese over so many years. They take like like we go to Vegas or um, you know Atlantic City for you East Coasters. A lot of Chinese go to Macau because it's very close. Well, it's every so often China gets upset and they don't really like their people gambling, or maybe it's they don't like American companies like profiting off their people. I don't know exactly what it is, but they'll stop visas. They won't allow people basically to go from China to Macau with the thought that they're just going there to gamble, and that usually forces stock drops. I wanted to I wasn't able to take a look, but let's see here. I want to take a look at Wynn's I want to take a look at their let's see here. Oops. Their 1 year chart. So I'm gonna just do share real quick. So you'll see, like last October, when the market was actually pretty good. It wasn't doing so well, and now I haven't done a lot of research into why it's doubled since November, but it's holding up in a high interest rate environment. So all that to say, I mean, all of these stocks are just doing so well. It's baffling. I don't feel comfortable investing into it, and I don't care about FOMO. Like I'm okay with like my stocks, but it's um it's really odd to see that's near a 52-week high again. I mean, the actual 52-week high was 117, but yeah, for for a stock that was $55 5-6 months ago, that's a pretty healthy return. So we should have
That's
sold our comic books back here and bought Winstock.
right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. That's I would be really curious to know what's caused that.
I'll do some research on it. I'll report back next week. But yeah, there you go. Win casino. So it's kind of one of those, and again, it's one of those like I'll preach this every show that we have, and we look at stocks, but it's kind of like invest in what you know. And I know I've always had respect for this company, as a whole, because it just kind of exudes Vegas in like a nutshell. And everyone, whenever Wynn has a new casino, everyone goes to it. He's not the CEO anymore, but they just do. I mean, that brand is like recognition. Wynn just exudes luxury. So, okay. Anyway, okay, let's go back to this tab, and then real quick, kind of some West Coast real estate. I want to do something different because I don't have numbers for second quarter yet, but just to kind of show you how crazy the market is here in Seattle. This is the most expensive listing in Seattle. It's an undisclosed location, but this mansion is listed at 27 million in Seattle, which doesn't shock me. It's a pretty big house. It's like I think 11 bedrooms, and where you see that lawn, attached to that lawn is actually a dock. So you can dock your Bond villain, boat, or what do you call it? Yacht on the shore of this house. And you can take your boat to the University of Washington football game. So I don't know if you know this, but I didn't go to Washington State. I went to the rival school. So you know how you guys, like for cookouts or for tailgating, you guys tailgate in the parking lot, right? So University of Washington, so a lot of UW alumni are like rich tech guys or whatever. They take their yachts to the dock of the stadium, and they have caviar and smoked salmon and champagne before the football game. Isn't that crazy?
All right. I'll go I'll have to get you out here for a college football game experience
Oh
to
yeah.
to witness. It's pretty cool, man. It's
Oh, I 100% would love to go to SEC. Just see the craziness. Like you SEC boys, man, you guys do it way better than we do. I wouldn't be caught dead on one of those damn yachts, man. Like I'll say it
caviar.
straight up, man. But yeah.
Yeah, caviar and champagne. It's more. So last year I went to a game with two of my nephews. My youngest nephew is now what's up, man? How are you doing? Um yeah, SEC tailgating is legendary. I went to a game with my oldest nephew and my youngest nephew my youngest nephew is a junior at
Mhm.
University of South Carolina. So for Parents' Day last year, he said, "I want you to go to Parents' Day with me."
Oh,
And I was
cool.
like, I was like, that, I mean, you have parents, but I mean, I'm happy to, I'm
To
honored
go.
that you would ask me to go. So we went and tailgated, and there was a lot of, you know, beer pong and food, and just had a really good time. But it's an experience. It really is. It's really cool. And now we've got, so 2024 will be the first year that we have um, Oklahoma and Texas
Oh my
in the
God, that's
SEC.
right. Oh God, it's just gonna get worse than debauchery. I love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I think we travel to Norman, Oklahoma for the 2024 season, which Shane Beamer, our head coach, was an assistant under
Yep.
Lincoln Riley at
Yep.
Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they look for these interesting. It's kind of a free for all that first couple of years, because there's we're not going to have divisions in the
Yeah.
SEC. It's just like open. For 2 years, we're just going to play a random schedule and see how it goes. We're actually losing Florida for the first time since we joined the SEC. We won't be playing Florida that year,
Wow.
but
Wow.
we have like out of conference rivals who like Clemson. We have to
Yeah.
play Clemson every year. That's our big rival, our in-state rival. So yeah, we have to play them. So that kind of limits what you can do outside of that. But yeah, we'll work on that. We'll get you here for.
Man,
But
I would. Oh man, I'd be so nervous, but like I would absolutely love it. Like Pac-12. Well, it was Pac-10 when I was in college. Like we know we don't even like we don't even hold a candle. It's a different planet in regards to like that. My buddy or my cousin went to Ohio State back in 2002 when Maurice Clarett was the running back. If that rings a bell, and I was like, dude, how was it? He was like, man, so the weirdest thing that I thought was, okay, I get like end up at 6 in the morning and start tailgate and all that, and like you fill up the stadium or whatever, right? The game was at like noon, or it was pretty early, and so it ended at like 3 o'clock. Well, here we just go home or we go to a party. I didn't know you stayed at the stadium until midnight. I had no idea, and so that just baffled me. Like I was like, man, like that just it was so different. But it was pretty cool. We don't really we
yeah,
don't
but well,
that's not
most
our thing.
people, if you're a diehard tailgater, and I've got a couple of
Yeah.
friends and family who are, they just take my cousin goes every year, like to every game every year, and has been for years. And
Mhm.
the night before, so Friday night, this is like so far off topic. I apologize, guys, but we
No,
kind
it's
of
okay.
went down a rabbit hole here. But the night before, he pulls the cars out of the garage and lays everything out to make sure he's not missing anything. So he's
Oh,
got
wow.
like a blow up couch that he takes, and he's got a stand that he puts his TV on, and they have a satellite so you can watch every game. And so, yeah, when you have a noon game and it's over, you go back, eat, drink, watch the 3:30 games and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's a day thing for sure.
It's definitely
It's
your
really neat.
religion. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of UW's kind of bragging is like all the people have champagne and caviar, for the midnight game. And they don't even watch it. Um, real
I'll
quick,
never
Michael,
root for them to be in the playoff again now.
what's that?
I'll never root for them to be in the playoff now because of that.
You never should. They are horrible. Their alumni is $77 million. What is it? This is at the time. They have a $77 million, like the early 2000s athletic budget. And we had like an $8 million athletic budget. We had 3 10-year win seasons, and they had an 0-12. They're the only college to go 0-12 in history, or 0-11, I can't remember what it was, to not have a single win in like college football history and like major like Division 1. Like they're the only team ever. Um, Michael, I want to if you are definitely going to Vegas, or when you do, I think you're about our age. Do not stay on the strip. If you're going specifically for March Madness, go to Old Town, stay at the Circa. It's in Old Town, and get day one passes to watch it in like an actual venue. It is the craziest. No, it's probably not the craziest, but it is the funnest, most exciting way to watch March Madness, because you just see pockets of people winning money and losing, other teams losing, other teams winning, upsets galore. It's the energy is, I can't explain the energy because you don't know what people are cheering for. And then when you win or you lose, like you have those same kind of things. And then you see someone like, kind of like, oh, I'm with you there on that or da da da. It's circa Vegas, Old Town. That's all you need to know if you ever go.
That'd be a fun trip.
Yeah, I try and go every year. So I didn't get to go this year, but I'll go next year. And then I just did like a quick search in South Carolina. Daniel Island, where's that exactly?
That's in Charleston.
Okay, so I looked in
So
Charleston. Okay.
they did they did gosh, what is the name of there's a venue there where they have a big tennis tournament. Like like all the top tennis players play at it. But
Okay.
yeah, it's on kind of like the
Masters?
I think it's like, well, it's for tennis, but it's I can't remember what the name of the venue was, but it's on I think it's Mount Pleasant is the main. It's like an island off of Charleston almost, but it's connected, and water all around you, and
Sure.
but it really, yeah, really nice area.
So I think this is a little bit smaller than the one I showed you earlier, but 6.7 million. I actually would prefer this one, regardless of location, because it was like a newer one. I think there's more acreage on this one as well. Um, I don't know how close it was to the water, but I just like the aesthetic of this home. And kind of the exciting part, at least on my end, when someone gets an offer, I get to see the home. And this kind of reminded me of, I mean, I'd never sold a $6 million house or done a deal for a $6 million house, but this was kind of a cool, like, oh man, it was kind of fun to do this and peruse kind of the architecture. There was a ton of like, that old school like plantation style I saw.
Right.
And like kind of like the brick, like the old craftsman, like 1910s type stuff. But I thought this was kind of cool to highlight because it was very new and like modern. But I thought it was a clean house. It was really cool. So
I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure Daniel Island was a manufactured thing. Like
oh,
they made a part, like a part, they turned this area into, they created Daniel Island. Like didn't it the land existed, but they kind of divided this area up and called it like, okay, this is now Daniel Island. I think it was just part of Mount Pleasant. I might be off on that, but I'm pretty sure but they do concerts at that same tennis venue. It's really neat. I know like Hootie and the Blowfish, a lot of those their members are from Charleston,
oh, okay.
and they do a concert at that tennis complex there. It's neat. It's a real neat area. It's a mix between like the marshy intercoastal waterway areas and then like full blown ocean. So
Hmm.
there's a lot to and of course really good seafood and stuff out that way as well, being on the coast. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
beautiful house.
Yeah, it was a really cool house. I loved it. So, and I haven't updated that quote. I apologize. But credit tip of the day, this wasn't really so much a credit tip, but kind of a tidbit for people that, with interest rates, people being very sensitive to interest rates. I always think of things like what could how could the customer's really in a tough spot because we don't know when rates are going to start to go down or if they will, they paused them this past month, but how long will that kind of curtain, close? Um, I don't know if you knew this, but it's not always a guarantee, but if you have pretty good credit, you can always call customer service on your credit cards that you either have a balance on or you're just trying to find financing for like a big purchase and you're going to carry a balance afterwards. So obviously first is like, look at transfer balance offers at 0%. I think that's always a good thing to do if you have a balance. It happens to me sometimes, like if I'm making pretty big purchases for this house, and so I'm looking at that personally. And The other thing is if you don't have any 0% interest offers, or if you do, you can use that as leverage. Call your credit card companies and say, hey, what's my interest rate? And they say it's like 22 to 28%, come back with them and say, well, my credit score is at 760, 780, whatever. Why is it so high? Would you be okay with lowering it? And if you have an established relationship with that bank, 9 times out of 10, they'll probably give you at least like a 6-month kind of deal where it's at like 14 or 3.99%, or they'll say, oh, well, we can't offer you that. However, here is 0% interest rate offers because you do have a good credit score. Now, you have to have a pretty good credit score to do this, but some people just don't know. And I thought this was kind of a good tidbit or a good tip to kind of look into if you are in that situation. Kind of being reactionary, but like also intuitive to like what you have control over. And just something to think about for people that carry balances on their credit cards and have that short-term kind of like punch, because rates, the one thing, like, yeah, mortgage rates have been hit pretty hard, but unsecured credit has been hit even harder. That's just the way it goes. So anyway,
It's
just a
worth a
little
phone
tidbit for
call,
you
it
guys.
seems like.
Yeah,
It doesn't hurt to call to see and
yeah.
just ask. So
And sometimes you just don't know what your interest rate is. There's all that mumbo jargon, or peruse through your statement. You say, like, "Oh, this is how much I owe. Cool, I'll pay it off." But if you can look at, like, if you can get that reduced, that could save you quite a bit of money month to month, and it's just a phone call, right? So just line up all your credit card bills and just go through each one. Same, I bet people do that with their cable bill all the time. I call my cable bill every 6 months to get like a reduction on the cable bill. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But shit, 10 minutes can save you $60 a month. Who knows?
yeah, mine's crept up steadily. I used to do that pretty regularly, and I haven't in a while. And I was like, God, man, that's such an expensive bill, and it's such a necessity now. And I think they
I know
know it.
nowadays you have to have internet or something, right? So,
Yeah,
but the worst they can say is no. So anyway,
worth a shot.
all right, Brad. The more you know. What you got?
Okay, so I was thinking about I like working with listings, especially now because I can kind of control, if you put a good product out there and I always pay one of my value addeds is I pay for a professional photographer to come to the house once it's ready to be photographed and take photographs. Um, so, and then pricing, you can there's a lot more control with having a listing right now. Buyers, you're just kind of at the mercy of what's available and what's in their
Yeah.
price range. So I got to thinking, okay, well, some people, and I've been asked this before, should I order an appraisal prior to listing my home for sale? And it's a good question, and it's an option that it, might be. I've suggested it at times if we couldn't get to. I realized within the last year and a half, people usually, when you go to a listing appointment, they already have a number in mind. They want to know what you say, and sometimes what I say causes me to lose a listing because it's so far off. So I got to the point now where that's usually the first question I ask is, what were you thinking? I'm sure everybody's got a number. What were you thinking? And then I'll lay out all the information. In fact, that's what I was working on today. I'm trying to set up a listing appointment for Friday, and so there have been times when I've suggested it. And so if you're unsure of your home's value, ordering a pre-listing appraisal is an option. Here's some things to think about. So if you go to the next slide.
Yeah.
All right, so an appraisal will I meant to say appraiser. An appraiser will review market indicators to establish the value of your home in the current real estate market. And I underline this part: appraisals cost in the neighborhood of $500 to $700. What do y'all roughly see in your area? Is that about
Um,
right?
it's at least 6 for an interior. It can go upwards to 1,200 depending on the cost and all that stuff. But I mean, that's pretty good. For an average home, right?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When I say average home, I mean like it's not it doesn't have like a clock tower at the top of it. Like just a normal, just a normal, 4 to 2 bedroom or four bedroom, like 2 bath type of home. So
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's and a lot of people don't realize that, and that's usually the thing that makes them decide one way or another. Hey, this is something I want to proceed with, or oh, I didn't realize that was the price. Let's talk about some other things. So what do they look at specifically? So appraisers use comparables to establish the value. A comparable would include um, homes that are similar in age. So that's a big thing. A lot of people say, well, the house right down the street just sold for 50,000 more than what you say my house is worth. And I'm like, well, that house was built 4 years ago. Yours was built in 1985.
Mhm.
So an appraiser won't even look at that. So that's something to keep in mind when you're considering this. It's got to be similar square footage. They will usually do a range of a couple of hundred square feet either way, maybe no more than 500 square feet up or down.
Right.
Number of bedrooms, number of baths, your lot size, and stuff like that. Now, I have seen them; they'll look at other factors, and they value certain things like a swimming pool, which you know that was a big pandemic thing there for a while. A lot of people they had money and couldn't go anywhere, so they were putting in swimming pools, and all those
Oh,
companies
right.
were
That's right.
like super busy.
Yeah.
Um, so a swimming pool, you get a swimming pool installed. I don't know if anybody who's watching or watch on the rewind has had one done, but it's an expense, pretty big undertaking and very expensive. But an appraiser will only value that at $10,000 to $20,000. So I
Hmm.
haven't heard anybody who got a pool during the pandemic that only paid $10,000 to $20,000. So don't I would always challenge people like don't do things that you think will bring value. Ask, that's one of the things I really enjoy doing about a listing appointment is looking for ways to save my clients money, like looking for ways for you not to have to spend money. An example of that is I've got a closing on Friday, and when I did their first listing appointment, they live in an established neighborhood. The trees and the tree roots have grown and kind of busted up their driveway a little bit. And they were really, hey, you don't need one, man. That's good to
Yeah.
know where we can.
Lucky.
Hey, we were talking, as coincidentally, we were just talking about taking vacations. So we know you got room at least on the weekend of the 4th of July. So, but
Awesome.
yeah, that's
Great
awesome,
idea.
man. Um, but I was talking to them, and they were like really, conscious of that it had busted up part of their driveway in a couple of different spots. So they got a quote on having it done, and it was $5,000. And so I went over and I said, it's not. I don't think it's that bad in person. So fast forward to we listed it a couple of weeks ago or about a month ago, and we got multiple offers and a lot of showings, and nobody ever mentioned anything about the driveway. So in my eyes, that's I'd save them $5,000 right there. That was something they thought they needed to do before they listed. So, have somebody knowledgeable come take a look. But an appraiser will look at things like, does it have a garage? There's a value there. The pool will have some value, but it's not going to be probably what you spent on it. Having a deck, or stuff like that. They do if you point it out to them. They don't always new windows is another one. People get
Yeah,
brand new, the
that's a big
double
one.
pane windows,
Yeah.
and but it's typically not the cost that you paid, but you do get some credit for that. So those are things that I'll point out when they're looking at one house versus the other. Like, hey, that one's still got those old windows. We've got Pella double pane windows. So they look at all that stuff when they're determining the value. So if you go to the next slide.
Um, yeah, and I had a question for you too. Do clients when like you have this conversation with them and they say like, aside from Do they ever ask you before they list it, like they were thinking of putting in like a new garage or like a pretty significant kind of like addition to it? Do you do they ask for your advice on how much that will add to the value of the home? I know people that like will say like, "Oh, this isn't my den, but I'll put like a closet in here so I can count as another room." But I'm talking like, do people ask you like, "Hey, Brad, I'm thinking about listing this house in like 3 to 4 months, but I want to install like a deck or like a garage or like an extra room. How much do you think that will add to the value of my home?" And then do they kind of like not call you out on it, but like, do you give them like ranges of how much, like if to make it seem if it's worth it or not? I guess it's probably a
I
weird
I,
question.
w- I typically will suggest let's just do focus on repairs as opposed to taking on a new project to add value to sell. Um, because I just think in general, I had some folks years ago who called me. They were when they were ready to list, and they had gone in and looks like we got an open invitation from Mr. Michael Baker
I
there.
saw that. I actually I screenshotted that, so we're good.
We'll have hey,
We
we'll
got,
yeah, make sure this I'm gonna download this video so we have
oh, we'll clip
forever
it.
proof.
We'll definitely
Yeah.
clip it. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and they called me when they were ready to list and they said, well, we just spent $10,000 putting hardwoods in the remainder of the house. It was in like the main living space. I was
Okay.
like, God, I really wish you'd have called me before you did that. And it turns out the house it went under contract quickly and um, the appraisal came back and they did not get any credit for that.
Damn.
And so they were like, well, we just spit. And I said, I know. I mean, I was very sympathetic. I was sorry that that happened, but I was like, don't assume that something is going to add value because it's probably just as a general rule. We're dropping a lot of tidbits here. This is a tidbit for sure. As a general rule, you're probably not going to get a dollar for dollar return on anything. I've had granite companies tell me if your clients want granite in their house and that's something they've always wanted, tell them to do it. If they want to do it just to get their money, they won't do it. And that's a company that sells and installs granite that told me
Hmm.
that. They
Yeah.
won't get your clients won't get a dollar for dollar return. The
Hmm.
things that do go a long way. I mean, if carpet needs to be replaced or hey, let's carpet looks like it's in good shape. Let's just get I've got a really good carpet cleaning company. Let's get them to come in here for a couple of $100 and clean the carpet real well. Or let's paint a couple of these rooms or stuff like that. New hardware on the cabinets. Like minor expenses don't it's not a monetary, it's more of like an aesthetic thing. You walk in and you just have a good feeling about it. And
Yeah.
stuff like paint and hardware and painting the cabinets and those kind of things will get you a lot further than a major project that you're hoping to get dollar for dollar amount from. So just as a general rule, I would say probably don't do that. Let's just fix the stuff. Your house, as appealing as it is, let's just fix the things that need to be repaired and pressure wash it and make it show well.
Yeah.
Because if people don't, a pool, you put in a pool and some people they see a pool. I see a pool
It's
and
an
I think that's
expense.
awesome. Yeah, but other people see a pool and they're like, you mean I got to clean that freaking thing
Yeah. I
every
gotta pay a pool boy
week?
to come down and steal my wife from me. No, thank
Right.
you. No, we're not gonna
I've
do
seen
that.
too many
Yeah.
horror stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's a good point, Michael. Too many people are watching those house flipping shows on HGTV, getting bad ideas in their heads about how to turn improvements into dollars. I agree 100%. In fact, when I would have agents ask me like, "Hey, I've thought about getting into real estate. What do what steps do I need to take?" I said, "Well, step one, stop watching HGTV.
Yeah.
Step two, sign up for real estate school." So the first thing is like, don't go into this thinking that it's all sunshine and rainbows and this isn't the Property Brothers. I'm not showing three houses, pick one. That is not a real thing. They don't come furnished beautifully like those houses are.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree 100% with that. It's a it's closer to a reality show, which are all not reality, as most of you know. Those aren't, it's more of like a reality show, a staged show. So yeah, that's but a lot of people see that as work, that's, hey, that's just more work I've got to do. So
Yeah.
yeah, just as a general rule, I would just kind of stay away from it and let somebody walk it. I mean, I walk a house not trying to make my clients spend money. I walk it trying to keep money in their pockets. That's just a general rule. That's the end result. Everybody's happy if we get to the finish line and hey, Brad saved us $5,000 on a new driveway or whatever. Those are major accomplishments. And that's how, to double back, that's how you get repeat clients.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, he saved us money. We invested a lot less than we thought we were going to have to in order to list our house. So
Right.
So an appraisal, I did it again. An appraiser uses the local MLS to review active, pending, and closed sales. They typically want to see 3 closed sales of similar properties. So you've got to establish a benchmark. You have to see like this trend, and it makes it a little difficult because, okay, in last year's market when everything was going for over list price, if you weren't paying cash, it had to appraise. So how are you getting? Somebody's got to crack the seal, I mean, like somebody has to be the one to be the top, and this one I'm closing Friday was the one I mentioned in our previous episode where the appraiser was like, we're going to have a tough time with this one. Well, I met him there. I brought him my list of key features and upgrades, and he texted me hours later and said, hey, I think we're going to get there. I was able to get some extra value in it. So but they want to see, like, somebody's got to crack the sale. And in fact, I think this one Friday, I think I'm going to set the new high for price per square foot in the neighborhood. So
That's great.
that's good. That's a good reason to follow up with the neighbors and let them make sure everybody is aware of that.
Sure.
But yeah, they want to see like three comparables and recent sales. So an appraiser will go back no more than a year to review the sales data. In today's market, it's preferred to go back as few as 3 months. Well, think about it here. So we saw most of the data that I look at says that we dipped in like October, November, and that was the bottom. When everybody thought we were plunging, that was the bottom, and we've seen a steady increase from that moment on. So that you go back 3 months or go back a year from now. This was a year ago. That's why I always look at this, when we see year over year sales are down. Well, for the first 6 months of this year, that hasn't been a really fair comparison because it was ridiculous in the first 6 months of last year. And then interest rates go down, and then suddenly things were changing. So it hasn't been a great metric to see year over year sales data when we're coming off the behemoth that was 2022, that first half of the year. But yeah, they want to close that. They want to close that gap as much as possible. If they go back a year, you might get a really inflated sale. So they want to try to like fine tune that a bit. So next slide. So this is what they'll look at. This is actually, when I was doing a comp today, this was a screenshot of what I was looking at. So everybody can kind of see this particular area. And this is something I'll have to lay out and show the client when we have our meeting. So I'm looking at, if you look at the next to last column on the right, close date or closing date. Sometimes I'll sort by that column so I can see, you'll notice green arrow down. So you'll notice that some of those, obviously they got the number. There's some sales that happened a little faster. Others stayed on the market, closer to 2 to 3 weeks. So that tells me potentially that they got that listing price wrong.
Hmm.
Had they been a little more realistic about the listing price, maybe you could have been on the lower end of that. Um, but there is one here, closed on April 21st, and it's got a red up arrow. So that's a promising thing. So this is just part of the conversation and why I will ask, like, hey, what's your expectation here? So
Yeah.
my suggestion in general, save your money, save that $700, keep it in your pocket. A good real estate agent will look at the same thing that an appraiser is going to look at. We've got the same resources, and we're going to look at this stuff and help you determine a list price, and then have this information to back it up. We're
Sure.
going to have documentation to back up what we suggest. So it's an option for some, but for most, probably I would use that money to do some of the repairs and touch ups and stuff like that'll go a long way.
Sure. Cool.
And then we're getting to the end of the Ted Lasso quotes. I think we're getting to the point where I've run out of like inspirational ones. But you know what the happiest animal on earth is? It's a goldfish. You know why? Got a 10-second memory. Be a goldfish, Sam. So that's maybe Ferd. Maybe we should follow our own advice on our
Sure.
losses we spoke of earlier, and be goldfish and move on, onward and upward to the next one.
No, yeah, I mean, it's great advice. You know, and yeah, I'm kind of already there. I just thought I'd share, that kind of frustrating scenario we had in backstage or whatever. But if you, I kind of think it also is like if you don't have those stories, then the reality isn't true, and the job kind of it makes it more just, oh, I've dealt with this before, right? A loss is a loss. You kind of learn from the loss or whatever. But one more thing that you actually tipped me on about this is a 40-year mortgage. So what exactly did you get from this article? And so you can let the people know and how that could potentially help or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, so this news dropped probably about 3 weeks ago or so,
Hmm.
and a typical mortgage is 30 years. And this headline, like a lot of the news articles, was a little bit misleading. So it's um, it's geared towards people who have existing FHA loans. So if they need some relief, they could potentially qualify for a 40-year mortgage, basically roll theirs into a 40-year that would ease up on their payments during that time frame. Now, I think a lot of people were thinking, oh, well, interest rates are going up. Um, a 40-year mortgage would lessen the blow a bit, so maybe we're back in the game some. So had you seen this and this was from, I think this came down from Fannie Mae. I think it was an announcement that Fannie Mae actually made, who they oversee FHA, correct?
Um, yeah, the Federal Housing Administration is technically who deals with it, so it's not exactly Fannie Mae. It's like a different division of all government agencies, right? But so the last time I saw a 40-year mortgage was in 2007, 2008. For kind of the same reason, rates were starting to go up and inventories were still healthy. So the problem was not so much demand for the home, but affordability of the home. So it's a little different from what we are now. I think if you're buying a house now, it's almost like a luxury, really, to buy a home because of the interest rate is so high and the cost of the home is so expensive as well. So is it clickbait? I think it. I mean, um, sure. I think it's an interesting article to read. But the thing too is like, so when these agencies have a product to offer, So they're like, we have investors that will invest in a 30-year FHA or a 40-year Fannie Mae Freddie Mac FHA mortgage. Not all of our business, all banks aren't going to go after this product. There'll be a select few that say, okay, I need to, get, I'm losing market share in, like, let's say Michigan or Detroit area, because we're more specific on county. This 40-year mortgage seems like a good idea to pitch out to those, to service those communities. Or, we're not servicing African Americans or people of color. And so this FHA mortgage product will suffice that amount we need to lend to those red line areas. We haven't offered this mortgage yet, and it's not because I think we're just not in that market to offer it, because it is kind of a risky type of thing to offer. And our pricing probably wouldn't be very favorable. When I say pricing, the cost as far as like discount points or points, what people know, they're probably not very favorable. So it's probably why we haven't offered this. And we probably taken a look at our existing FHA portfolio and looked at it and said, okay, well, our clients aren't really, this doesn't really service our clients or the market we're trying to service. So to answer your question, no, we haven't seen this. Will we see it moving forward? I don't think so. Just because we're not in that same rut of, we need to drive up demand for housing. Let's get this 40-year mortgage thing. We have plenty of demand. It's just there's not enough inventory, which is kind of a funny thing. Funny thing to say that we've been saying for the past, like, I don't know, since the beginning of the show. It's just there's not enough inventory. So I don't think this will really help our clientele be able to get a house, because they're still going to compete against someone who has 20% down, yada, yada, yada. So,
Yeah, the only thing I could see maybe that, and I wanted to talk about this just to get mainly to get your take on it, being in this world. But it's, I guess, if the home, if the mortgage costs were more reasonable, it could potentially change your bracket as far as what you could afford.
oh yeah,
So maybe there's a shift in where you fall on the spectrum of affordability. But what's the real incentive for a mortgage company to do it? I mean, people don't stay in their house for 30 years, much less 40. So is it a fee based thing where there's at closing, there's a fee that comes that goes to them? I mean, what would, if, let's say, let's hypothetically, this is something they want to offer not just to existing FHA
clients.
clients, but they want to say, okay, this is currently not for, so I'm making this abundantly clear to anybody watching. This is not for new home buyers. Somebody, my buyer clients right now can't get a 40-year mortgage. This was not, but the headlines in the news and in the articles was so vague that it created some, you know, it people were getting excited without actually having read what was being offered. So hypothetically, let's say this is something that's offered to new home buyers or first-time home buyers or whatever the case may be. What would the incentive for a mortgage company be to do something like this? And James, I thought about you when I talked to Ferd about doing this because of exactly what you're talking about there. Because I remember when it was just, your car loan is 5 years and that's it.
Yeah, I think, and James, I mean, always hitting the hit on the nail for sure with any comment he has, really, in regards to like how the car industry and all that. But to answer your question, Brad, I think it just services like an area that like our company may or may not need. So if it services the community of FHA current holders that are like, and we see our portfolio, oh shoot, our FHA people are, 10% default. That's really high, by the way. We, we have to figure a way to shore up that clientele base, or we're not in compliance with our investors or whomever, right? So we may offer this at like a lower cost base, or the market dictates itself in any type of market, right? Whether that be cars, comic books, housing, mortgages, right? So if we get inquiries about it, we may look into it. And so that's why I always ask like clients, okay, well, what would make you come to Home Street? Oh, we don't, oh, you guys don't provide 40-year mortgages. Oh, okay, well, I'll let my manager know about that. And they take consideration to those type of inquiries, but we also have to look at it from our side. Does it like is offering a 40-year mortgage to an existing customer that's been 5 years into their home? Now they start over that process. They start over the life of that loan at year zero again. In some cases, like for someone, I don't know if this fits into their category, but what if an older elderly couple that is at year 25 of their 30-year mortgage has almost paid off their home. However, their expenses have gone up, and to extend the mortgage on their home 40 years again reduces their monthly payment by $500, and that makes them whole, and they're like, I don't care, I'm gonna die, in 10 years, or just they're that old or whatever. And they're never gonna leave the home. It makes sense in that kind of decision making process. But for like the regular home buyer, like a 40-year mortgage at this point, it just doesn't I don't think there's a market for it because of the lack of housing. Um, that's just my take on it. Because like it would service a housing market that is like, shit, we can't afford a home anymore. But now, but so we're out of the game entirely. But the problem is, like, there's not a 2-month wait for a home in Seattle. It's a 2-week wait for a home in Seattle or King County or whatever. So yeah, so it's tough. I mean, I would feel weird about doing a 40-year mortgage for a first-time home buyer, but people get desperate, and everyone's situation is different. When I say desperate, it's more of a desperate thing, like I need a house because my family's growing, or for whatever reason. Then we'll look into it. And if it's, but like, yeah, you're right. What's the likelihood of anyone staying in like one home, you know, for 40 years? It's just not the trend anymore.
Right.
But I guess the other way to look at it is, what if that trend starts to kind of, people are not going to move out of their house for 40 years, or 5 to 10 years? It's just, you know you need time to see those trends kind of coincide, or to see if those actually work out. But no, it's I haven't seen one. I don't think I will. it, I would you'd have to see supply increase in inventory, and we're just not seeing it right now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I just thought it was interesting
No,
in
totally.
light of our, our desire to debunk some of the headlines and give accurate information. And I saw the it was mainly fueled by a lot of the, like Michael said, kind of almost clickbait ish kind of feel to the headlines, um, both in news and in articles like this. So I thought it'd be cool to talk about and share the truth with our folks.
No, definitely, it's good stuff. Yeah, that's I mean, that's basically what we all have for today. Any closing thoughts on today's show?
Uh, Another good one. I appreciate you guys being here to check us out. If you're watching on the rewind, please like and subscribe, and tell your friends about us. We appreciate it. And
Oh, we got
any questions that y'all might have,
we got one question that's, I
we're
see
our,
the Flash. Have you seen it, Brad?
I have not.
So it's kind of me. So I did not like it. I shouldn't say I didn't like it. I what so
You
it's
can say
hard
I
for
don't
me well, I don't want to ruin it for.
for anybody else
Oh, okay. So
who
Michael saw it. Okay, so I'll just say this. Okay, for a Flash origin first appearance, or no, it's not first appearance, but for a Flash movie that was supposed to be Flash, it seemed very more Superman than Flash. So what I mean by that is, like, so Flash is probably my favorite DC character. There are so many villains in Flash that you could have introduced into this movie. I know this is the end of the Snyderverse, but like if it truly was the end of the Snyderverse, I really hope that they're going to introduce a Flash villain because they're so cool. And the fact that the quote unquote Flash villain in this movie sucked, and then more so, it was just like a reduction of Superman, like kind of what they did with like, it's kind of like Thanos was like the main, like villain, and he kind of like that kind of made more sense, right? But like it was a Flash movie, and you had Zod as like the main villain, essentially, without giving up too much away. When you could have had Reverse Flash, Zoom, the Thinker, Godspeed. I mean, you could have had so many different Flash villains. And for Flashpoint being like the arc of like the storyline, please, man. Like Warner Brothers, you guys are this better be the end of like the debauchery of DC, because like I'm not gonna watch another DC movie again. I'm sorry, I'm just not gonna do it. I was disappointed. I gave it 7 out of 10.
You'll have to watch when James Gunn starts doing it. I mean, you'll have to see. I mean, don't you have faith in him?
I don't really have like a ton of faith, but with that said, I don't have a lot of expectation from him either. I think he'll do a good job, but
Did you like Peacemaker?
oh, I loved Peacemaker. The comedy though is why I liked Peacemaker. It wasn't so much the storyline, but the comedy was really well written. But as far as like the Peacemaker like story, I didn't dig the villain in that one either. But the comedy is like perfect. I mean, that's my kind of comedy. Um, and I actually, so here's another thing. I loved Supergirl. I freaking loved her, but what they did with her was, why'd you even introduce her? I'll just say that. But
Yeah, I
yeah, I
think a
was.
lot of people's ratings were influenced by nostalgia to
Yeah, and
some degree.
nostalgia is like great. It's just kind of getting old. The nostalgia thing like doesn't sell me to go see a movie again. It was cool for like, I guess nostalgia is like something I buy because like I'll buy a collectible because of nostalgia because it gives me that feeling. But like this is like something as a quick tangent, and I'll let everybody go. We've gone on for 2 hours, so um, I'm sick of the reboots. I'm sick of like the unoriginal ideas. I think that's hitting comic books and all that stuff. Why don't trends, like, I know trends come and go, right? But like, why don't trends like with homes, right? Like colors are different. It's a new and it's like color's been around for thousands of years. It's not like a new thing. Why don't you make like why can't movies and comics come up with original ideas when original ideas are happening like outside my window with neighbor next door picking charcoal gray, and now that's going to be a kind of the new trend. I don't know, trying to relate comic books to like real estate and finance and all that stuff. It's yeah, so anyway, but and yeah, Michael, come through the OTR chat tomorrow, and like we'll talk about that at a little bit further in. We are doing an OTR show tomorrow. It's going to be at 6 o'clock Pacific time, but we are doing one tomorrow, so that's good news.
Good. Maybe y'all can talk about the Craven trailer on top of the Flash thing. That's
The Craven trailer was cool. I probably won't watch it in the movie theater unless I hear like it was awesome. Man, going to the movie theater is expensive, man. Forget the
yeah.
tickets, the popcorn. And I've been going with my new niece and nephews, or my new nephews. So they want every single, like they're so boys, but yeah, I may
Those
just watch it.
Regal rewards, gotta use them. Get some free popcorn and stuff with those Regal rewards.
Yeah, yeah. I heard Transformers was good, but yeah, man, I can't even watch the Mariners. I have no entertainment. Like they're down 3-0 right now. They're playing like crap, but that's another
I think
channel
we're getting to
for
the
show.
real root of the problem here, folks. It's the Mariners. It's not so much the comic book movies.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, I
just
appreciate.
root for the Braves instead, man. They're doing
I
pretty
could do
solid.
that. I could get on the Michael Harris train. I like him. He's pretty good. So
God, he's in a great month, man.
yeah, yeah. And anyway, baseball is just I love baseball. I just love it. But well, I appreciate everyone coming through. We had 6 live now, so that's pretty cool. We'll see you next Wednesday. and hope you all have a great week. And we'll see you next week.